National Arts has been made possible by Low Real Estate Group at Path Realty, proudly serving the Shepherdstown community in West Virginia for nearly a half century, providing commercial, leasing, rental, marketing, and consulting. Hi, I'm Mike Baker, and welcome to National Arts. On this program, we're going to meet one of the foremost metal sculptors in the entire nation. His name, Scott Cawood. Scott uses steel to magically transform discarded objects that have seemingly lost their value to society into eye-popping sculptures. While Scott does take commission work, he finds real joy in creating works that stimulate his imagination and bubble up from his subconscious. Currently, some of Scott's work can be seen right here at Gallery 105 in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Let's have a look. Scott, you create your metalworks to serve as your voice. I think that's a fascinating statement. It's one way of expressing yourself.
Well, to me, that's what making art is about. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to express yourself without words, beyond words. It's kind of like the creative intuition can come out.
You were working as an armature maker in Washington, D.C. and doing mounting, and then all of a sudden something blossomed inside your head and you became this amazing metal artist. I
had a background in metal fabrication from the Coast Guard originally. I got to working with these guys doing mounts for a lot of the museums in D.C. I found myself being locked in the basement of the Museum of Fine Art, the Museum of Modern Art, and with just endless pieces of sculpture and making patterns for a project of theirs. And, I was mesmerized. And then I started coming home, and on the weekends and in the evenings, I started making my own stuff just because I felt I wanted to. And it just took off, really. It just really
Prior to this, did you know you had any artistic sense?
Not really. I mean, I've always been, had a creative mind, mm-hmm. And I've dabbled with stuff, but I never really, when I found working metal, I found my medium. I found, oh yeah, this is it. I can go with this. And I just knew.
The amazingly creative things that you make are made from scrap steel. Right. Not from new sheets of steel.
Right.
You are using remnants to create these works of art.
Right.
That is pretty astounding.
Well, it's part of the art to me. It's the whole recycle deal, reuse, reinvent, and I've been doing it for a long time before it was really popular. But now that it's popular, great.
Well, now that it's become popular, maybe in terms of actually acquiring the art itself, but there's no shortage of old sheet metal, is there?
No, not sheet metal, but now
the
that
steel is harder to find.
It's as it goes up, mm-hmm. if it has any value. It used to be laying by the side of the road, mm-hmm. and now somebody picks it up and takes it to the scrapyard. Yeah. So there's less. I've taken to using lately is these 250-gallon heating oil tanks that have a certain life to them. People always want to get rid of them. Well, it's a big roll of sheet steel. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at first, but in the course of working with it, I realized because it holds flammable liquid, the quality of the steel has to be high for puncture resistance to meet the standards. So you end up with a really high quality steel. So for using it like in my faces and making creases and bending, it doesn't tear, it doesn't rip, it bends where I want it to bend. I can squeeze it or open it up.
You have just let your secret out of the bag. You know you did by doing that. Because any other metal sculptor that's hearing that right now is going, I'll be darned.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of tanks to go around.
Okay.
I mean, I've got my stash. I think I've probably got enough for a lifetime.
Okay, there you go.
There's plenty of them.
Talking about that, when you actually see something, do you see the image that's going to come out of it? Or do you actually have an image in your head and go look for the steel that goes with it?
Both. It just depends on the piece.
Okay.
Sometimes I have an image in my head, and there's certain things, like when I do portraits of the blues guys, it's got to look like that guy. So that's what it's about. Now, sometimes I'll go through my piles and I'll see these shapes and I'll just start welding them together, and I'll make abstract stuff or kind of like steampunk stuff that just wants to fit together. And that's fun too. Most of the time with that, I just let the pieces take me. But it just depends.
The pieces are happy to come together, aren't they?
Yeah.
They have a life of their own.
Yes. I tell everybody that. I listen to them. That's the difference.
And you have several of your works in the Clinton Library. Congratulations.
Yeah, 2 pieces on temporary loan. It's through the Delta Blues Museum, and it's an exhibit about the Mississippi Delta culture, and it's at the Clinton Museum, Presidential Museum in Little Rock.
The scope of your work is so astronomical. How do you, what's your background? I know you write short stories, but what's your background that would give you this wide breadth of creativity?
I don't know really, other than when I was younger, I traveled and did a lot of different stuff. And I find things got stuck in there, and come back. I used to travel around a lot, and people would say, well, you're writing a book? I say, no, I'm reading it. I'm trying to figure it out. So now I'm writing it, with my work.
When you tell people that you came into the art world through the back door, is that a reference to the fact that you were working with armature and then all of a sudden you decided to blossom out on your own?
Yeah, yeah. It just,
if you'd never had that job, this may have never availed itself.
It exposed me in the right way, and it just took like a magnet.
It's hard to believe that your skill set could mature based on all the things that I've seen. They look so proficiently crafted right now, but you say that you've matured.
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. There's doing a lot of the reality pieces of the portraits and stuff like that, and it took me a long time to figure out how to do that. It's wild, and now I've got that down. So now I'm taking it to the next, or what I see as the next step, and it's I'm doing a series. It's taken me a while about consciousness, which is really hard to define, other than your eyes are open and the lights are on. So it's a wide gamut of things. And I started with my personal consciousness, then I went to a national consciousness, and now I'm going to just a common consciousness.
You're talking about the brain per se?
Well, okay, so the first piece I did, it's a self-portrait, right? Well, the bust, my shoulders, is my shop, right? And then my head comes out of the roof of the shop, and off the top of my head is a big tree, like a big oak tree, made out of steel and chainsaw blades. And the idea, and if you look into the shop, there's a heart in the middle of it hanging down on roots from the tree. And the name of the piece is Taproot. And it's just about where I get my power, that's my
nature,
my consciousness, my
nature.
Yeah, that captures me pretty well. This is the third piece in my series called About Consciousness, which is pretty hard to define. Some of the other pieces you saw in the gallery concern that. One was a self-portrait, and one was a portrait, like a national portrait. This is like a global portrait. It's just a human experience. This one's about being in over your head, the feeling of being over into something that's you're way too deep into. And so the idea is this guy represents mankind, but also the individual too, the individual mind. And so to make him feel over his head, he's underwater. He's basically underwater. And what I'm doing is I'm putting a stingray on his head that's basically just like it's on top of his head. The fins for the stingray would be like that. Be some of these saw blades cut to give it some menace. The tail of the stingray will be the hedge clippers, which will come down back here. Underneath, originally I was going to do a jellyfish, but I didn't like the top. So what I'm doing is I'm using tentacles because I want that feeling, but I'm going to use this bicycle chain for the tentacles, and I'll weld it in places kind of like that and have it hanging down all around them. And then in this part, there's I'm using couch springs, which are shaped like this. And what I'm doing is compressing them so they go like that. And that's rough, and they'll go in here. So this looks like it goes to like bubbles and air and kelp and stuff. And that's pretty much it. He gets, it's just that, it's trying to capture the feeling of just being overwhelmed. You know, however that comes about, whether it's financially or with your girlfriend or whatever the hell it is there's a feeling everybody gets sometime when you go, that oh crap moment, when it's like, man, I am in too deep. I'm in over my head. So I thought that was a good thing, that everybody experiences that on some level, a conscious feeling of that. The one after this one I want to do is about pain, another thing that everybody experiences. And I think that one will be another bust like this, but with rods going through its head in every direction, like 300 of them, just like that big. It'll take me a while to do it, but I think it really does capture that feeling, that consciousness. And what I use, you can tell this is kind of rusty. All this skin and stuff is from these 250 gallon oil tanks that I collect and cut up and use for my sheet metal. This is my collection of my oil tanks, which is what I do all this figurative work with. People give them to me. They just come up the alley. We dump them off and stack them up. I don't know how many people or heads or faces I've got in here, but it's quite a few. So we'll see. I got enough stock here to last a while. Some of these are really nice too. This is a nice one. That's heavy duty. It's all welded. That's an old one welded. The way I do these figurative pieces is I make a cage inside like that, which is hard to see, I'm sure. But it's kind of like that thing on the chalkboard there. It's the lines, the facial lines. And then I come back in the negative spaces. I take old grocery bags and I take a Sharpie and I find them and I map them out. Then I cut it out. Then I take it over to the oil tank, cut it out of that. Then I bring it over to the anvil and shape it, bend it, whatever I got to do. Then I tack it in. And then I go to the next piece, next piece, next piece. And after I get them where I want them, you know, I adjust everything like I want it, and then I weld them in and then grind the welds out. So it's a hell of a process, but you get used to it.
And when you take something like a drum or you take something like a piece of scrap sheet metal and you make something out of it, do you ever hearken back to where that came from and the men or the women for that matter pounded it out or made it something else? Do you ever think back to that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's how I got started. I appreciated these things and what went in it to already make it. Mm-hmm. You know, I blacksmithed for a long time. And that gives you an appreciation of it on a really fundamental level. And you understand where steel comes from and what it takes to make it and to make a part, and then just cast it aside. If you can find something else to do with it that's a positive thing, great.
You've said that you don't believe in wasting things, that through transformation, love, and care, you basically create something new, or you refresh what is old. I couldn't help but think that that's a metaphor for the American dream. And what really Ulysses S. Grant was proposing, and that is a new frontier of taking the old as well as the new, being creative with it, and giving everybody an opportunity. Your work is a metaphor for the American dream.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I always say nobody really thinks about your art enough to get that kind of stuff. It's there. That's an inherent part of it to me. Trying to get other people to understand that through the material doesn't always happen, but it's always there.
At what point does your work, or has your work, become your salvation? I know you probably, no men like to delve into their past or their personal life, but you did say in your bio that it's been your salvation.
And it has been. I used to be a pretty wild character, you know. I had a lot of energy and no real good place to put it.
Okay.
And what happened when I discovered art in the medium, I found it. I found a place to put all that energy and to focus it. And so I essentially became another person. I just started working all the time. And it made me happier than anything I could ever imagine. And it's just, I knew I was doing the right thing. Kept me out of places I shouldn't be and kept me focused. And it makes use of my imagination and my creative energy, which I think was what I was so frustrated about when I was younger, not having a direction with that. But now, once I found it, it's just step on the gas.
You sort of wonder if there is divine intervention here, that somehow you have a job that shows you something that you have a creative skill for, and then all of a sudden you embellish that skill and you make things that no one else can make. That's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. I don't have any answers
Well,
for it other than open mind, you know, being in a position to be able to take chances.
well, maybe the answer to that is the tree coming out of the head inside the house. Maybe that's where it all came from. It sounds godlike to me.
Yeah, you could probably put money on that.
It sounds godlike. It sounds almost like nature-driven in a way, that you were put here to do this.
It feels like it. I mean, if somebody would ask me that question, I'd say, yeah, it feels like it. That's kind of how my relationship to it.
It sounds to me like you bound out of bed in the morning, almost like a kid at Christmas, and you can't wait to get down to the shop to add that one arm or that one appendage or something that you were thinking about the night before. Maybe even wake up in the middle of the night and go down to the shop.
I've done that.
Is that what it's like?
Yes, it is. When I'm working on a piece like that, it's like I'm hypnotized. That's all I eat, sleep, think it. I've waken up in the middle of the night and, oh, that finger needs to go that way. I was fighting it all day, and you know, go up there and bend it and go, oh, and go back and go to sleep. You know, I've worked on some big sculptures where, you know, it's been 18 months of every day, you know, mostly 10, 12 hours a day, and by the end of it, I just felt like I was beat up. You know, my arms were sore. I had stuff in my eye.
Oh,
you
my
know,
Lord.
I was a mess. I thought, man, I'm getting too old for this.
Well, hopefully the remuneration is good enough to keep you at work.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep at it. I've slowed down quite a bit. It's just I've got arthritis in my shoulders. That slowed me down, and I started working smaller, and not pushing myself so much, which feels good. And I still enjoy it. I'm making smaller pieces generally, but I'm enjoying them just as much. I got into making high heels a few years back. I was making lingerie pieces about the streets of New Orleans. And so the lingerie was kind of architectural. But it just, as things progress, I read this quote where some Italian shoe designer said that women's high heels were corsets for their feet. So I said, oh, I've got to make high heels now. That was the next progression. So I started out making them like real high heels, and I just started having fun. I call these Puffy D's. They're dragons made out of silverware stems, if you can see them. And they're fun. They're just supposed to be like Puff the Dragon things. And these guys, they're called Rock and Roll. They were inspired by the Monterey Pop Festival film of Janis Joplin, where they showed her feet and her shoes when she was singing, and they were shoes like this. So I added the crazy stuff in the eyes. I call them rock and roll. That's what it's about. So, but that's where those ideas came from. And these little guys I've been making for years, off and on. These are musicians. I've made dancers, tango dancers, flamenco dancers. I use little found objects for their accoutrements, their instruments and hats and stuff. And they're just fun. And these are fun too. I call them nightingales. And all they are is a spark plug, ball bearing, and 3 nails and 2 forks. And they're from wrens that nested in my shop. And when they hatched, the runt stood up there and wouldn't fly out of the shop. And the parents were there, and the other 4 had. This one finally jumped and landed right on my arm. Looked at me, I looked at it, and out the door it went. So the next day I went up to the shop and made one of these, and I've been making them ever since. They're good. They're little sculptures that people can like, and they're handmade, and they're reused found stuff, so they're kind of fun. And this is a dragon tank. It's a gas tank. It's a functioning gas tank that I put a dragon on. And the color is mica powder. All my color is mica powder. I don't like paint, and I didn't use color for years because it was too opaque and too flat. Then I discovered mica powder, and it's got depth to it and like a metallic feel to it. So it keeps that metallic feeling to it, that's what I like.
I can see you with large installations in many of the great museums in America.
Yeah, well,
I can see that.
That'd be nice. I have some big outdoor installations in Frostburg and Frederick. Again, I love doing those. And if I could, that's all I'd do because they're so satisfying, but they're so demanding, and I don't have any help.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem for me now. I need help because I can't go like I used to. I still love it though. I mean, I've been learning clay. So, because the day's going to come when the steel will be a little bit too much for me.
You're already reinventing yourself. See, that's why I ask you that question. Do you have any other interests? So you're already looking down the road. Mm-hmm. Think of how much easier that's going to be for you.
Well, and I came to that in a funny way too. I was doing these portraits, and I was doing drawings of them. And a friend of mine said, he's a painter. He said, get some clay and just sculpt them. Just do clay sketches. You'll really work out your problems. Good idea. I don't know anything about clay. I ordered a bunch of clay, started slapping it together, and now I do clay a lot, just as studies, But I could see one day it'll go to that, But hopefully I'll be a little more proficient at it by then. After working with steel, clay is like a vacation. Yeah, it's so soft and forgiving.
You're sort of the Picasso of the metal artisan world, aren't you? I mean, that's what he did. He made his life easier.
Well, he's a smart man.
Yeah.
I hold an open studio the first Saturday of every month.
I saw that. Yeah.
For the sole reason, if anybody who has any questions can come by and ask me. If they come by at other times and I'm in the middle of something, I run them off. So I preserved one day a month for anybody who wants to come by, see what I'm up to, whatever they want to talk about, they can bug me.
I hope you enjoyed meeting Scott Cawood, clearly one of the most unique and gifted sculptors in America today. Until next time, remember, art was meant to be appreciated, so you be a part of it.